They say every old campus has its ghost stories, but this one is different.
We're not talking about flickering lights or spooky noises.
We're talking about a student who walked into his dorm room one night and was never seen again. The university called it a runaway. The students called it the legend of Room 404.
But I found something they all missed.
Something hidden behind the walls for over 30 years. What you're about to see is the raw, terrifying footage of my investigation into what really happened to Elias Vance. Was it a harmless prank, a supernatural event, or something far more sinister? The truth is colder than any ghost story. If you're into true horror and unsolved mysteries, make sure you subscribe because you won't want to miss where this goes. The key felt wrong in my hand. It wasn't one of those modern key cards you just tap against a sensor. It was a real, old-fashioned brass key, heavy and ornate, its teeth worn smooth with age. The tag attached to it read, Blackwood Hall, Room 404.
My new home.
I, Liam Carter, freshman and aspiring documentarian, was officially a resident of the oldest, most Gothic building on Northgate University's sprawling campus. I'd specifically requested it, hoping the architecture would inspire my new web series, Campus Confidential. I lugged my 2 suitcases and a duffel bag full of camera equipment up the 4 flights of creaking stairs, the air growing colder and mustier with each level. The hallway on the 4th floor was narrow and dimly lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs that hummed a mournful tune. My room was at the very end of the hall, isolated. As I slid the key into the lock, the door swung open before I even turned it, revealing my resident advisor, Mark, propping it open from the inside. He was a senior with a perpetually tired smile. Liam Carter? Welcome to the top of the world, he said, gesturing into the room. You got the penthouse suite. He was joking, of course. The room was small, a standard single, with a scarred wooden desk bolted to the floor, a metal frame bed, and a wardrobe that looked like it had been there since the building was erected in the 1920s. A single, large window overlooked a dense patch of woods behind the dorm. It's got character, I said, dropping my bags. Mark chuckled. That's one word for it. You know the stories about this room, right? I raised an eyebrow, my documentarian senses tingling. Stories? No, they left that out of the housing brochure. He leaned against the doorframe, his voice dropping slightly. Just the usual campus legend stuff. They say a student disappeared from this room back in the 80s. Kid named Elias Vance. One night he was here, the next, poof, gone. Left all his stuff behind. He shrugged, his smile returning. They say he haunts the place now. Mostly just messing with the Wi-Fi and hiding people's keys. You know, ghost stuff. I grinned. A ghost roommate? Awesome. At least he won't hog the bathroom. Mark laughed and handed me a welcome packet. Well, if you see him, tell him he's late on his housing deposit. My info's in here if you need anything. Seriously. Anything? He gave the room one last look before he left, an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Once he was gone, the silence of the room settled around me like a shroud. The air was unnaturally still and held a distinct chill, even though it was a warm September day. I ran a hand over the desk and noticed deep, long scratches in the wood, almost like someone had tried to claw through it. Underneath, near the wall, the floorboards were scuffed and uneven. I unpacked my camera first, setting it up on a tripod facing the door. All right, confidential crew, I began, speaking to the lens. Welcome to my new digs. Room 404 of the infamous Blackwood Hall.
I recounted Mark's story, hamming it up for my future audience.
So our first investigation is right here. The vanishing of Elias Vance. Is room 404 haunted by a troubled spirit, or is it just a story told to scare wide-eyed freshmen like me? I spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking, but I couldn't shake a strange feeling. A cold spot seemed to hover near the desk, a pocket of air that made the hair on my arms stand up whenever I passed through it. And there was a smell, faint and hard to place, like damp earth and old paper. That night, as I tried to sleep, the building groaned and settled around me. But beneath the normal sounds of an old structure, I heard something else. A faint, rhythmic scratching. It seemed to be coming from inside the wall behind my desk. I told myself it was a mouse. It had to be a mouse. But even then, as I pulled the covers tighter around me, a part of me knew it wasn't. The scratching sound became a nightly ritual. It always started around 2 in the morning, a faint, insistent scritch, scritch, scritch from behind the plaster of the old wall. I tried to reason it away, pipes, rodents, the building settling. But the sound had a deliberate quality, a rhythm that felt too consistent for a random animal. My web series, however, was off to a great start. Haunting of Room 404 premiere episode got more views than I expected, with comments flooding in, a mix of fellow students sharing their own versions of the legend, and skeptics telling me to check for squirrels. To dig deeper, I decided to research Elias Vance himself. I spent hours in the campus library's digital archives, but it was like chasing a ghost in the machine. There were no news articles about a missing student from that time. No official records of any incident. It was as if the university had scrubbed him from its history. The only thing I found was a single grainy photograph in the 1988 digitized yearbook. Elias Vance stared out from the page, a serious-looking young man with intense eyes and dark, unkempt hair. He wasn't smiling. Under his photo, his major was listed as Antiquarian Studies, a program the university had discontinued years ago. Frustrated, I called my friend Chloe, a history major who lived in one of the newer, less character-filled dorms across campus. "I'm hitting a brick wall," I confessed, pacing my room as I talked to her on speakerphone. "It's like this Elias guy never existed, apart from one creepy yearbook photo." There was a pause on her end. "Liam, maybe that's for a reason." I asked my history advisor about the Blackwood legends. She got really weird about it, just said they were unsubstantiated rumors. Chloe was the cautious counterpoint to my impulsive curiosity. "The story I always heard was more detailed than what your RA told you. They say Elias wasn't just a student, he was obsessed. He believed that the university's founder, a weird industrialist from the 19th century, was into some dark stuff and built secrets into the campus architecture. Elias thought he'd found a code, a cipher hidden in the buildings themselves, and that room 404 was the key." I stopped pacing and stared at the wall behind my desk. "A code? What kind of code?" "I don't know. A map or something?" she said, her voice laced with concern. "The legend says he left a note behind the night he vanished. A piece of paper with a bunch of weird symbols and numbers on it. People who stayed in that room have claimed to hear tapping noises from the walls, like someone's trying to tap out a message." My blood ran cold. "Tapping," I whispered, glancing at the wall again. The scratching sound I'd been hearing suddenly seemed less like an animal and more like a signal. "Liam, are you okay? You sound freaked out." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a casual tone. "It's just a creepy story, perfect for the show." We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, but her words echoed in my mind. That night, I lay in bed with my audio recorder on the nightstand, waiting.
Right on schedule, the sound started.
Scritch, scratch. I held my breath and listened. It wasn't random. There was a pattern. 3. It was a sequence. It wasn't an animal. It was deliberate. It was communication. My skepticism, once a sturdy fortress, was beginning to crumble brick by terrifying brick. I was no longer just documenting a campus legend for a web series. I felt like I was becoming part of it. The idea of a coded message being tapped from inside my wall was both terrifying and electrifying. This was no longer just a ghost story. It was a genuine mystery, and I had a front row seat. My next step was clear that cryptic note Chloe mentioned. If it was real, it was the key to everything. The university archives were located in the basement of the main library, a place that smelled of decaying paper and furniture polish. The head archivist was a stern, bespectacled woman named Mrs. Albright, who seemed to view my request with deep suspicion. "Student files from the 1980s are restricted," she said flatly, not looking up from her computer. "Privacy regulations." I laid on the charm, explaining it was for a historical documentary project about campus architecture. I may have slightly exaggerated the academic nature of my web series. "It's purely about the evolution of student life in living quarters," I explained earnestly. "The personal information is irrelevant." After 20 minutes of persistent, polite pleading, she finally relented with a heavy sigh, leading me to a rolling stack and pointing to a row of dusty, unlabeled boxes. 1988. Student housing maintenance logs. "It's all I can give you access to. You have 1 hour." It was a long shot, but it was something. I pulled out a box labeled Blackwood Hall 88-89 and began sifting through brittle, yellowed pages of work orders for leaky faucets and broken heaters. My heart pounded with the mix of anticipation and the fear of finding nothing. Then, about halfway through the stack, I saw it. The request was filed by the then RA, citing a persistent foul odor and strange scraping sounds reported from within the north wall. My hands trembled as I read the maintenance crew's follow-up note, unable to locate source of sound or smell. No signs of vermin. Advised resident to monitor. The resident, of course, was Elias Vance. Tucked behind this work order, used as a bookmark, was a folded, fragile piece of paper. It was a photocopy, the original likely long gone, but the contents were unmistakable. It wasn't a letter, it was a chaotic jumble of numbers, arrows, and crudely drawn symbols that resembled constellations or alchemical signs. The sequence opens the way. They can't stop me now. This was it. This was Elias's note. I quickly and discreetly took a high-resolution photo of it with my phone. Back in my room, I projected the image of the note onto my wall, filming an excited, whispered update for my series. "This is it, crew. This is the code Elias was talking about. The first real piece of evidence in a 30-year-old mystery." The numbers and symbols made no immediate sense, but I was determined to crack them. Exhausted from the day's discoveries, I eventually fell asleep at my desk. I woke up hours later to the pale light of dawn filtering through my window. My neck was stiff, and my laptop, which I'd left on but closed, was now wide open. The image of the note was still on the screen. But something was different. A single set of numbers in the sequence, 4, 8, 15, had been crudely circled, as if by a trembling hand using the trackpad.
a red circle drawn in a simple paint program.
A program I hadn't opened. I lived alone. My door was locked. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. It could have been me, sleepwalking or moving in my sleep, my hand brushing the trackpad. It was the only logical explanation. But as I tried to convince myself of that, the persistent cold spot near my desk seemed to seep into my bones, colder and more intense than ever before. The circled numbers on my laptop screen became a turning point. My initial thrill of discovery was rapidly being replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Was a ghost trying to communicate with me, or was I losing my mind? Or, as a third, more rational possibility began to form, was someone trying to make me think I was? I called Chloe, my voice trembling slightly as I explained what happened. A ghost using Microsoft Paint? Liam, come on, she said, though her tone lacked its usual dismissive edge.
Listen, I've been asking around some more.
The legend of Room 404 is a pretty popular prank for the upperclassmen in Blackwood, especially on freshmen who seem a little too into it. They're known for messing with people, moving things, making noises. It's a whole tradition. A prank. The idea was both infuriating and, to my surprise, immensely comforting. A human explanation felt safe. It meant I wasn't going crazy, and I wasn't being haunted by a tragic, wall-scratching spirit. They found my web series, I muttered, the pieces clicking into place. They saw I was investigating it and decided to have some fun. Exactly, Chloe said, sounding relieved. They probably have a way into the room or a master key. The laptop thing is creepy, but it's totally something a tech-savvy theater major would do for a laugh. My fear began to curdle into anger. These upperclassmen were preying on a real person's disappearance for their own amusement. I decided right then to shift the focus of my series. I was no longer hunting a ghost. I was going to expose a cruel, elaborate hoax. I'm going to catch them, I told Chloe, my voice firm. I'm going to beat them at their own game. That evening, I did a full sweep of my room, searching for any sign of intrusion. I checked the locks, the window, the ceiling tiles. Everything seemed secure. To be sure, I bought a small, motion-activated camera and discreetly placed it on my bookshelf, aimed at my desk and the main door. I filmed a new segment for my series explaining my new theory. It seems the ghost of Elias Vance might be a little more alive than we thought, I said to the camera. To the pranksters out there, game on. That night, I went to sleep feeling empowered, confident that my hidden camera would catch them in the act. The next morning, I eagerly reviewed the footage. I fast-forwarded through hours of myself sleeping peacefully. Nothing. No one entered the room. Dejected, I was about to delete the file when I noticed a strange flicker in the timeline right around 3:13 a.m. I played it back at normal speed. For exactly 33 seconds, the video devolved into a chaotic mess of digital static and distorted colors, the audio a high-pitched whine. Then, just as suddenly, it returned to a clear, still image of my empty room. It wasn't a glitch I'd ever seen before. It wasn't like a corrupted file. It was like the camera had recorded a pocket of pure electronic chaos. Disappointed and confused, I slumped down at my desk. This didn't fit the prank theory. Why would pranksters have technology that could disrupt a camera in such a bizarre way? My frustration grew. As I leaned back in my chair, my foot kicked something under the bed. I reached down and pulled it out. It was an empty energy bar wrapper. The brand was Volt Charge, a new product that had only been on the market for a few months. Its slick, modern design was a stark contrast to the 30-year-old mystery I was supposedly investigating. My heart leaped. This was it. This was the proof I needed. Ghosts don't eat energy bars. My pranksters had gotten sloppy. The static on the camera was weird, but this wrapper was concrete, physical evidence of a recent living intruder. The game was still on, and they had just made their first mistake. The energy bar wrapper was the anchor I needed, pulling me back to the solid ground of a rational explanation. The prank theory was back in full force. The digital glitch on my camera was an anomaly, maybe a malfunction, but this wrapper was undeniable proof. Someone had been in my room. Fueled by a new wave of determination, I decided to conduct a search more thorough than any prankster could anticipate. They were clever, I'd give them that, but I would be smarter. I wasn't just looking for hidden cameras anymore. I was looking for their methods, their secrets. I started with the obvious, the wardrobe, the mattress, behind the radiator. Nothing. I moved to the walls, tapping every inch, listening for hollow spots. The wall behind the desk, the source of the cold and the scratching, felt particularly solid, built from thick plaster over brick. No hidden panels there. My attention turned to the desk itself. It was an old behemoth of a thing, dark wood and scarred from decades of student use. It was bolted to the floor, an immovable fixture of the room. I remembered the scuff marks I'd noticed on my first day, on the floorboards right under the knee hole of the desk. I dismissed them as wear and tear, but now I looked closer. Laying on my stomach, I aimed my phone's flashlight into the dark space. The scuff marks weren't random. They formed a distinct arc, as if something had been repeatedly dragged over that spot. My fingers traced the edges of the floorboards. Most were sealed tight with age and varnish, but one, right at the center of the arc, had a little give. My heart started to race. Using the edge of the old brass key to my room, I carefully worked it into the seam and pried. The board resisted with a groan of old wood, then lifted. I expected to see a crawl space or wiring, maybe a hidden camera left by my tormentors. But what I found was a small, shallow cavity, no bigger than a shoebox, carved out of the subfloor. It was a hidden compartment. And it wasn't empty. Resting inside was a small, leather-bound journal, its cover coated in a thick layer of dust that puffed into the air as I lifted it out. The leather was cracked and dry, and a faded strap held it shut. This was no prank. No upperclassman would go to the trouble of planting an antique this convincing. The energy bar wrapper was a red herring, a fluke, maybe something that had been kicked under my bed from the hallway. My prank theory evaporated in an instant, replaced by the chilling, undeniable weight of the object in my hands. I sat on the floor, the dusty journal resting on my lap. With trembling fingers, I untied the leather strap. The first page was inscribed with a name, written in elegant looping cursive, Elias Vance. Property of. Do not read. I flipped through the pages. They were filled with dense, almost frantic handwriting, complex diagrams of the campus, and mathematical formulas I couldn't begin to understand. I turned to the last entry. The date was scrawled at the top, October 29th, 1988, the night before the maintenance request was filed. The night he disappeared. The ink was slightly smeared, as if written in a great hurry. The words were a torrent of paranoia and exhilaration. They know I'm close, it read. I can feel them watching me, but they think I'm just a foolish boy chasing stories. They don't know I found it. The journal felt unnaturally cold in my hands, a deep, profound cold that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. This was real. Every legend, every whisper was real. I wasn't investigating a prank. I was holding the final thoughts of a man who had vanished from the face of the earth right here in this very room. The world outside room 404 ceased to exist. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours, a pool of light from my desk lamp illuminating the brittle, yellowed pages of Elias Vance's journal. I set up my camera on its tripod, hitting record not for my web series, but for myself, needing an unblinking witness to what I was uncovering. I started from the beginning, reading each entry aloud in a hushed voice. The journal was a window into a brilliant but fracturing mind. Elias wasn't just chasing a ghost story. He was a serious researcher. His antiquarian studies major was a self-designed program focused on local history and architecture, with a specific emphasis on the university's founder, Alistair Blackwood. According to Elias's research, Blackwood wasn't just a wealthy industrialist. He was a high-ranking member of a secret society, an esoteric order obsessed with sacred geometry, alchemy, and hidden knowledge. Elias believed that Northgate University wasn't just a school. It was a massive, functional piece of architecture designed to channel unseen energies, and that Blackwood had built a network of secret passages and chambers within its walls to conduct his society's rituals. The entries were filled with complex calculations, linking the positions of campus buildings to celestial alignments and decoding patterns in the brickwork of the oldest structures. It was obsessive, meticulous work. But as the journal progressed, the tone shifted. The academic curiosity curdled into paranoia. Elias wrote about being followed, about library books on his research topics going missing from the shelves right after he returned them, and about feeling a constant, oppressive sense of being watched. He didn't think it was a ghost. He was convinced he had stumbled upon a modern-day continuation of Blackwood's secret society, a group of alumni, faculty, and students dedicated to protecting the university's hidden history. He called them the custodians. "They leave me warnings," one entry read. "A compass on my pillow facing west. A page torn from a book about labyrinths left on my desk. They are telling me to stop, but they are also confirming that I am right. There is a labyrinth, and I am close to the entrance." Then I got to the final entries from October 1988. His obsession had zeroed in on his own dorm room. "Room 404, he wrote. "It's the keystone, the focal point of the entire north wing. The alignment of the window with the old observatory, the number of bricks in the north wall, it all points here. The entrance isn't behind a bookcase or a fireplace. It's too clever for that. It is the wall itself." The scratching I had been hearing took on a terrifying new meaning. It wasn't Elias trying to get in, it was someone else. Or was it? The final entry, the one dated the night he disappeared, was almost illegible, the handwriting a frantic scrawl. The note is the key. The tapping from the other side is the final confirmation. It's not a threat, it's an invitation. They know I have solved it. The sequence must be completed tonight. The custodians are watching me now. I can see their shadows in the quad from my window. But they won't stop me. I have to go in. It's the only way to prove I'm not crazy. The sequence is complete. The walls are not empty. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The cold spot by the desk felt like a frozen void. Elias hadn't been scared of the tapping. He had welcomed it. He thought it was a signal, a final piece of the puzzle.
He wasn't running from something in the walls. He was trying to get to it. I looked from the journal to the cryptic note on my laptop screen, then to the solid, silent wall. The mystery wasn't about a ghost who haunted a room. It was about a man who had willingly tried to walk into a wall, believing it was a doorway. And the most terrifying part was, I now had the instructions to follow him. The pieces were all there, scattered across my desk like the remnants of a puzzle I was terrified to solve. The grainy yearbook photo, the photocopy of the cryptic note, and the cold, leather-bound journal. Elias Vance's entire life, his obsession and his disappearance were contained in these few objects. And I was at the center of it. This was real, and it was dangerous. The tapping from the other side is the final confirmation. The scratching I heard every night, was that the invitation Elias wrote about? Was it a 30-year-old echo, or was it something new, meant for me? The note was the key. I pulled the image up on my laptop again, studying the sequence of numbers and symbols. 4, 8, 15. The numbers circled by some unseen hand. In the journal, Elias had cross-referenced these numbers with architectural blueprints of Blackwood Hall he'd managed to uncover. He believed they corresponded to specific bricks in the north wall of room 404. It wasn't a combination lock, it was a sequence of pressure plates. A part of me, the rational, sane part, screamed to stop. To pack my bags, report the journal to the police, and request a room change. But the other part, the documentarian, the seeker of truth that had started this whole thing, couldn't let it go. I had to know. I had to see it through. I needed a witness, though. I couldn't do this alone. I set up a video call with Chloe, my laptop perched on my bed. "Chloe, you need to see this," I said, my voice low and urgent. I quickly showed her the journal, the note, and explained Elias's theory. Her face on the screen was pale. "Liam, no. This is insane. You can't. What if you get stuck? What if it's a trap? Then you'll have it all on video," I replied, only half joking. "You'll be my lifeline. If I'm not back in, say, 10 minutes, you call campus security. Tell them everything." She protested, begged me not to, but she saw the look in my eyes. She knew I was going to do it with or without her watching. "Fine," she relented, her voice tight with fear. "But I swear, if you get eaten by a wall monster, I will never forgive you." With my main camera recording from the tripod and Chloe's worried face watching from the laptop, I approached the north wall. The cold spot was intense now, a physical presence that made me shiver. I held the phone with the image of the note in one hand. According to Elias's diagrams, the sequence started 4 bricks down and 8 bricks in from the corner. I found the spot. The brick looked no different from the others. Taking a deep breath, I pressed it firmly with the palm of my hand. Nothing happened. My heart sank. Maybe Elias was just delusional after all. Then I remembered the journal entry. The pressure must be sustained. I pressed again, this time holding it. After a few seconds, I heard it. A faint click, like a tumbler falling into place, echoing from deep within the wall. Chloe gasped from the laptop speaker. I heard that. Adrenaline surged through me. It was real. I moved to the next number in the sequence, my hands tracing the old, cold brickwork. Another press, another deep, satisfying click. I continued the pattern from the note, a complex series of presses and holds, my heart pounding in my chest with each successful connection. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with ozone,
and the smell of dust and ages.
On the final number, I pressed and held my breath.
For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a low, grinding groan filled the room. A vertical seam I hadn't noticed before appeared in the plaster. With a shudder that shook the floor, a section of the wall, about the size of a door, receded 2 feet into the darkness, revealing a black, narrow opening. A wave of stale, musty air, colder than a tomb, washed over me. It was a passageway. Elias was right. He wasn't crazy. And the doorway he'd been looking for was standing wide open in front of me. The darkness inside the passageway was absolute, a stark contrast to the dim lighting of my dorm room. It was an ancient, silent black that seemed to absorb all light and sound. The air that poured out was thick with the smell of decay, damp earth, and something else. Something metallic and vaguely sweet, like old pennies and forgotten things. My first instinct was to slam the opening shut, to pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. I was in too deep. Liam, what are you doing?
Get away from there!
Chloe's panicked voice crackled from the laptop, a tinny sound in the heavy silence.
I have to see what's inside, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Just for a minute. I have to know. I grabbed the powerful flashlight I kept for shooting in low-light conditions and my primary camera from its tripod. This needed to be documented. 10 minutes, Chloe. Then you call, I said, not waiting for a reply. I clicked on the flashlight, its powerful beam cutting a sharp cone into the oppressive dark. I took a tentative step across the threshold, my sneakers crunching on a fine layer of dust and grit. The passage was narrow, the brick walls rough and cold against my shoulders. It wasn't a hallway, it was a service conduit, a space between walls filled with ancient cloth-wrapped wiring and thick, corroded pipes that wept beads of condensation. The flashlight beam danced ahead of me, revealing that the passage went back about 10 feet before opening into a larger space. I moved slowly, my breath fogging in the frigid air. The scratching sounds I'd heard for weeks were gone, replaced by the thundering of my own heartbeat in my ears. As I cleared the narrow passage, the space opened up into a small, windowless chamber, roughly 10 feet by 10 feet. It was constructed of the same rough brick as the passage. In the exact center of the room, there was a single, straight-backed wooden chair. My flashlight beam fell upon it, and I stopped dead, a strangled cry catching in my throat. Slumped in the chair was a human skeleton. It was fully intact, leaning slightly to one side, as if its owner had simply fallen asleep and never woken up. The bones were yellowed with age, draped in the tattered, moldy remains of what looked like a flannel shirt and denim jeans. The fashion of the late 1980s. Elias Vance. My stomach lurched, and I fought the urge to be sick. He had found his secret room. He had walked through the passage, and the door had closed behind him. The horrifying truth crashed down on me. The tapping, the scratching I had heard for weeks, it wasn't a ghost trying to communicate. It was Elias. It was the sound of him, alive and trapped in the dark, desperately scratching and clawing at the wall, trying to get out, until he had no strength left. He hadn't vanished. He had been buried alive. As I stood there, paralyzed by a mixture of horror and profound sorrow, my flashlight beam caught a glint of metal on the floor next to the chair. I cautiously stepped closer, my light falling on an object lying in the dust. It was an old camcorder, a bulky VHS model from the 80s, far larger than my modern digital one. It was covered in dust, but it seemed otherwise intact.
My journalistic instincts, however morbid, took over.
I knelt down and picked it up. It was heavy and cold. The battery was obviously long dead, but as I pressed the eject button, a cassette tape popped out with a mechanical sigh. He had been filming. He had documented his final moments. The legend wasn't just that a student had disappeared. The truth was so much worse. He had died here, alone, just a few feet of brick and plaster away from a bustling dorm room, and nobody ever knew. I scrambled back through the narrow passage, my body trembling uncontrollably, the old VHS tape clutched in my hand like a sacred, terrible relic. As soon as I was back in my room, I shoved the heavy brick door with all my might. It slid shut with a deep, final thud, the seam disappearing into the plaster as if it had never been there. The coldness in the room began to dissipate almost immediately. The air felt lighter. The oppressive presence was gone. The scratching had stopped forever. I leaned against the now solid wall, gasping for air, my mind reeling from the horror of what I had found. Elias Vance wasn't a ghost story. He was a body in a chair. A tragedy. I looked at the laptop, where Chloe's face was a mask of sheer terror. "I'm calling," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm calling them now." "No, wait," I commanded, my voice stronger than I expected. "Don't. If we report this, they'll take everything. The journal, the tape. It'll all get buried as a university liability. No one will ever know his real story." A grim determination settled over me. I owed it to Elias to share the truth, not let him become a forgotten file in a campus police report. I took out my phone and made an anonymous call to campus security, reporting a suspicious and foul odor coming from the walls of the 4th floor of Blackwood Hall. They would find him eventually, on their own terms. It was the best I could do. Now, there was one last thing. The tape. I spent the next hour frantically searching online, finally finding a tech-savvy upperclassman in the film department who, for a case of beer and the promise of a vintage gear credit in my series, owned a working VHS player and the necessary cables to digitize the footage. We met in a darkened editing bay, the humming of the equipment the only sound, as he carefully inserted the 30-year-old tape. The screen flickered to life with a wash of static, then a shaky, poorly lit image appeared. It was the brick chamber, filmed from Elias's own perspective. "It worked!" His voice, young and filled with triumphant disbelief, crackled through the speakers. "I'm in. I'm really in." The camera pans around the small room, just as I had seen it. He turns the camera on himself. It's the face from the yearbook, but alive, his eyes wide with a manic energy. "They said I was crazy," he says to the lens, laughing. "But I found it." Blackwood's sanctum. His triumph is short-lived. He turns the camera back toward the entrance, and we see the heavy brick door sliding shut, plunging him into near-total darkness, save for the camera's weak onboard light. Panic. No, wait! It's not supposed to do that. It's not. The footage becomes chaotic. We hear him pounding on the solid wall, screaming for help. The last few minutes of the tape are agonizing. The battery on his camera light is dying. He slumped on the floor, his voice a broken whisper. Someone did this," he chokes out. "They followed me. The custodians, they trapped me." The final seconds of the recording are the most chilling. The camera is on the floor, pointing at the sealed entrance from his side. We hear nothing but his ragged breathing. Then, from the other side of the wall, from my room, we hear the faint sound of footsteps. They pause right outside his tomb. And then, a sound that freezes the blood. The tape cuts to static. Elias Vance didn't just get trapped. He was silenced. The legend wasn't about a boy who vanished. It was about a boy who was murdered, his tomb hidden in plain sight for 3 decades. My web series was over. There was no clever sign-off. I just presented the evidence, ending with the chilling audio of that final terrible laugh. The truth behind the legend was not a ghost. It was something far, far worse. The horrifying reality of human cruelty. What did you think of Elias's story? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to make sure you don't miss our next investigation, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay safe out there.